Hello, fourth grade. Welcome to week 3 of virtual learning. This week we are going to be reading another myth in English, and then you'll have to go on Schoology and answer some questions about it. The myth I'm reading is from Classic Myths to Read Aloud by William F. Russell. Because these myths are made to be read out loud, I didn't post this story on Schoology. Instead, I want you to just watch the video and listen to the story. If you would like, close your eyes and try to imagine what's happening. About the story. When Zeus overthrew his father, Cronus, and began to rule the universe, he and his 2 brothers cast lots in order to divide the vast territory among them. Hades became lord of the underworld, where the souls of the dead reside. Poseidon took dominion over all the oceans and the seas, while Zeus himself became sovereign over heaven and earth. Among Zeus's 3 sisters was the noble-browed, broad-shouldered Demeter, who was given the considerable responsibility of being goddess of agriculture, fertility, and marriage. The Romans called this goddess Ceres, and it is from her name that we derive our word cereal. Demeter, the great earth mother, was goddess of the harvest and of all growing things. Tall and majestic was her appearance, and her hair was the color of ripe wheat. It was she who filled the earth with grain, for it was she who ripened the fruit, and who saw to it that the grain grew tall and that the pastures were sweet and bountiful. In her honor, white-robed women brought golden garlands of wheat as first fruits to the altar. Planting, reaping, threshing, winnowing, these she watched over and cared for, and hard-working farmers honored her with songs and feasts. All the laws that the farmer knew came from her. The time for plowing, what land would best bear crops, which was fit for grapes, and which was to be left for pasture. She was a goddess whom all called the Great Mother, because of her generosity in giving to humankind the necessities of life. Although Demeter found joy in her duties and in being served and honored by all the mortals on earth, still more did she love and cherish her only daughter, the beautiful Persephone. Persephone was as young and fresh as the spring itself. Her demeanor was always cheery, and when she was not helping her mother oversee the planting or the harvest, she frolicked about the countryside with her friends the nymphs, dancing and singing and weaving garlands of wildflowers while the valleys rang with their laughter and mirth. Now it happened that these joyous sounds seeped down and down to the darkest regions of all, the gloomy and foreboding underworld, the land of the dead, which was presided over by Hades, who was a brother of the great Zeus. Hades had long sought a mate who would live with him in his gloomy kingdom, but every maiden he asked had refused, and so he remained alone, bereft of all companionship save that of the dead souls who inhabited his dreary domain. But the sounds of joy and gaiety that issued now from the beautiful Persephone caused Hades to want her for his mate beyond all others. Indeed, so strong was his desire that he beseeched the mighty Zeus to grant him this favor and allow him to spirit the maiden away to live with him in his kingdom below. And Zeus, out of brotherly affection, and with no word of any kind to Demeter, did grant Hades' request, and allowed a mother's greatest joy to be stolen from her, never to return. That very day, while Persephone and her playmates danced and reveled in a particularly bountiful meadow, a black cloud swept down upon them from the east, and so swiftly did it advance that no one could tell its cause or content. Only when it was too late did they see the hideous and terrifying figure of Hades and his ghostly chariot, that was pulled by 4 coal-black and menacing steeds. In an instant, the lord of the underworld had grabbed the unsuspecting maiden, and clutching her tightly, he drove the horses to breakneck speed, for he feared that Demeter could pursue him while he remained on the surface of earth. Soon the chariot came to a narrow fault in the land, where, at Hades' command, a chasm opened up before them, and they plunged headlong through the earth's crust, and down as the opening closed behind them, sealing off the light of the sun and sealing Persephone's hopes of ever rejoicing with her friends or feeling the loving touch of her mother again. Bitter was the grief of Demeter when she heard the news that her daughter had been mysteriously swept away, though no one could tell her where the maiden had been taken. Veiling herself with a dark cloud, she sped swift as a wild bird over land and ocean for 9 days, searching everywhere and asking all she met if they had seen her daughter. She inquired of gods and mortals alike, but none could offer her any news or hope. Even the birds, who knew what happens in the hills and fields, knew only of Persephone's disappearance and nothing of her whereabouts. In abject despair, Demeter turned to Phoebus, Apollo, who sees all things on earth as he pulls the sun across the sky behind his golden chariot. "Yes, I have seen your daughter," said the god at last. "Hades, with the consent of Zeus, has taken her as his queen to dwell with him in the land of mist and gloom. She struggled, but her strength was no match for his, and at his command they were swallowed up by the earth, to reside forever in the dark below." When Demeter heard this, she fell into deep despair, for she knew that she could never rescue Persephone if Zeus himself had ordained that Hades should have his wish. She did not care any more to plead her case in the palace on Olympus, nor did she care for anything but to spend her days alone, grieving over the loss of her only child. She took on the form of an old woman and wandered about the earth, seeing only its sorrows, finding no joy in anyone or in any place. To her all was misery, all hope was lost. Now it happened that during the months of her wandering, Demeter did not, indeed could not, attend to her duties as goddess of all growing things. And without divine aid and blessing, the grasslands and pastures withered, the cattle died, the earth turned dry. The birds feasted off the seed corn that would not sprout in the arid soil. The gods looked down and saw that a great famine had descended upon the land, and that mortals had even begun to neglect their offerings and sacrifices, for they could no longer spare the gods what little they had for themselves. Zeus heard the cries and lamentations rising from those who suffered on earth, and he heard the persistent entreaties from the gods asking that he end the famine and allow the mortals to resume their sacred offerings. And so he appointed the goddess Iris to descend to earth on a rainbow and tell Demeter to return to her duties and restore the crops and pastures to the earth. Dazzling Iris swept down from Olympus and found Demeter still in mourning, still in the garb of an old woman, still without care for her duties or for humankind. Iris offered her beautiful gifts and whatever powers among the gods she chose, but Demeter would not lift her head to listen. Still, Demeter was not blind to the strength of her position, for she realized that Zeus needed her powers, and that only through the powers of Zeus could she ever hope to see her daughter again. Her reply to Iris was both a threat and a bargain. She would neither set foot on Olympus nor let anything grow on earth, unless and until Persephone was restored to her from the kingdom of the dead. When Iris reported this proposition to Zeus, he knew what he must do, and so he sent Hermes, of the golden sandals, to the dark reaches of the underworld, there to tell Hades that Persephone must be set free to return to the light and to her mother on earth. The messenger found her, pale and sad, sitting beside Hades upon his throne. She had neither eaten nor drank since she came to the land of the dead. But upon hearing the edict of Almighty Zeus, she sprang up with joy, while the dark king became darker and gloomier than ever. Though he could not disobey the command of Zeus, Hades was crafty to the last, and he implored Persephone to eat and drink with him before they parted. Joyous as she was, she could not refuse his request, and although she was eager to begin her ascent, she took a pomegranate from him to avoid further argument and delay. She did not eat the whole pomegranate. Indeed, she ate only 7 of its tiny seeds. But for some strange reason, even this satisfied Hades, and he bade her farewell as Hermes took her with him up, and finally into the light and the warm air. When Demeter saw Hermes and her daughter, she gushed with a joy unknown, and Persephone embraced her mother with a passion unable to be put into words. And so the two caressed each other and sobbed their mutual love in complete happiness and understanding. Demeter was first to speak, saying, "Did you, my daughter, eat or drink anything at all during your stay in the underworld?" And Persephone replied, "Nothing, mother, until Hermes came for me, and then only 7 seeds of a pomegranate." "Alas, my daughter, woe has befallen both of us again," wailed Demeter, her grief now as intense as her joy had been just moments ago. For now the extent of Hades' deceit became clear as Demeter revealed the irreversible decree of the fates. Whoever tastes of food in the kingdom of the dead shall be lost forever to the world above. Thus the fates had decreed, and even Zeus was powerless to alter their law. Yet Persephone had not eaten the pomegranate, only 7 small seeds, and surely she could not be condemned for eternity by 7 small seeds. This was the nature of Demeter's appeal to Almighty Zeus, and its reason and fairness moved Zeus to compromise. Although he was powerless to change what the fates had determined must be, he was able to interpret their decree. And so he ruled that because Persephone had eaten only the seeds of the pomegranate, she must only spend a month each year in the land of the dead for each of the forbidden seeds she had eaten. For 7 months each year, therefore, she must dwell in the underworld with Hades as his queen, and the remaining 5 months she may spend with her mother on earth. And so it is each year that for 7 months Persephone is lost to Demeter, and for this time Demeter mourns, and trees shed their leaves, and cold comes over the earth, and the land lies still and dead. Persephone herself is pale and cold and sad, and she rules with Hades over the icy souls that inhabit the lifeless and bleak environs that know not laughter nor warmth nor hope. But after those 7 months, Persephone returns to the upper air. Her mother is glad, and the earth rejoices. The crops spring up, bright, fresh, and green in the plowed land. Flowers unfold, birds sing, and young animals are born. Everywhere the heavens smile for joy or weep sudden showers of gladness upon the earth, and life abounds, bursting from every corner, renewing the world and all its people.